Good evening, everyone. Welcome to America's Third Party. I'm David John Sponheim, and we are doing an anti-war rally today where we are talking about the origins of war and how we got here. And I talked to you a little bit briefly about the power of the monetarists, the incredible power of rich families like the Rothschilds, and how they've controlled the monetary system through the Federal Reserve, which they own. Well, they are basically at the backbone of what we are calling war. War is something that has been created by old men that young men have to fight. And for over a century now, our country has been played. The American people have, thinking they're supporting freedom and democracy, have gone to war, and they've lost their loved ones, their children, their kids have died. And the powerful elitists sit back, they don't lose their kids. They don't go off to war with their kids. They basically come back and that get awarded senator positions like John Kerry or John McCain. The elitists essentially think they control the dialectic in the media as well, that they control all of our thoughts, that they watch us and they play us like a marionette would play puppets. But what the elitists don't know is, while we see what they're doing and all these ridiculous false flag operations that they're pushing that try to create gun control so they can disarm us like the Germans were disarmed and all of the ethnic minorities were disarmed in the 1920s and 30s in Germany, it's not going to play out like that in America. And their plan, as illy conceived as it is not working. Case in point, the Senate, the U.S. Senate overturned the gun control measures pushed forth by Dianne Feinstein a day after the Sandy Hook false flag operation was pushed onto the American people. I can't tell you how many people out there are talking about Sandy Hook still. Thousands of people are going to websites, looking, spreading the word, realizing there's not a stitch of blood evidence in the police report showing that anybody in that school died. Seriously. And all the redacted copies are all blacked out, saying it was too bloody to show anything. There's not one picture of Adam Lance's mom, Nancy, dead, or where she died, or blood spatter where she died. It's just a nicely trimmed little house. It looks like an everyday house. Then they put black hefty bags in the windows to make it look kind of weird. Basically, the whole thing is a hoax. And that's one of the turning points here, because what's happening when you put out a false flag for the American people to watch and they say this is BS, then you get all these American people gathering together on the internet, sharing on YouTube, and you can't control the firestorm of awareness that's happening. Well, all of this, along with the realization that Abbottabad was a joke, we never saw a picture of Osama bin Laden's dead body, no DNA evidence was presented to the bin Laden family when they sued in international court. Not one bit of DNA evidence was presented by the State Department. And then, of course, there were no pictures of Osama bin Laden being thrown over the Carl Vinson in the North Arabian Sea. That's just another lie. And then you go on to Benghazi and how the cover-up occurred with Barack Obama saying that, well, it's just a bump in the road, when Chris Stevens died. Chris Stevens knew too much. You see, the elitists are showing their hand. They're showing that they can't cover their trails. They can't even process information fast enough at the CIA art department to pretend like everything's fine. So all of this is going to be revealed on the internet. The American people are learning right now. We're finding out. We're doing the due diligence to find out the truth behind the corruption in Washington that has led our nation to a pivot point, really. We are at a very crucial point where we can seize the reins from these powerful elitists who are controlling our congressmen like puppets are controlled by the marionettes. Well, we've been deceived all the way back to FDR and beyond. Globalists like Henry Kissinger, he has been behind the scenes throughout the entire history of our country, and in terms of the modern history, and he is working an unbelievable plan, a New World Order plan. He's even said it.
Barack Obama is very good for the New World Order.
He makes these statements publicly. He brashly says,
It will be helpful for the New World Order to exist.
He thinks that we aren't listening. We Americans know that this dastardly plan where the UN is somehow interjected into our government is happening right now. We know that. We know that the UN has far too much power in our government. And we're not going to sit back and watch it happen. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that this guy and his Kissinger Institute is not going to deploy more wars like they started the wars throughout the past 35 years. In 1976, he came up with an idea called low-intensity conflict. This New World Order plan that he has to just start little fires all around the world to keep it down, kind of thing. And then came up with the preemptive strike concept that George W. Bush used to start a war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Well, how many men have died? Men and women, 6,000 nearly? Over $1.6 trillion wasted on these wars. And the American people, they have a budgetary crisis right now that's turning the two-party system into a bunch of jellyfish. They don't even know what to do. So out of all of this emerges a third party that can actually provide answers to the incredible problems facing our country. We have the goal to actually do the unthinkable, provide simple solutions to complex problems that everybody can talk about. The simple solutions could be anything from our homestead renewal plan, which will take old houses and fix up houses and provide a backbone of sustainability for our country so that people can live in affordable housing and they can get a job too fixing up houses. These are practical ideas that once dispensed and put out there, we can actually build our economy. We've got a whole lot of ideas like this on our platform at americasthirdparty.com. But this globalist is not just the only guy working here. This globalist is kind of a has-been. Kissinger is on his way out. He probably won't live too much longer. And we're really fighting a bigger war now. And that war is against the environment. The very thing that these global elitists have taken down. They've actually destroyed the environment. Big companies like Dow Chemical and Monsanto are systematically trying to destroy the earth. And this third party is going to start with the intention of not only saving the American people from the tyranny of the two parties, but we're also going to save the environment as well and provide jobs doing that. We're going to try to correct what the two-party tyranny and the elitists have tried to do, which is to destroy the earth. We're going to do the impossible. And that's what makes this a unique opportunity. The American people don't need to be completely hoodwinked on this issue. You know, we've been hoodwinked before by a lot of very powerful people. But, you know, General Wesley Clark, he made a very important statement, and I'm going to play this video for you, at least a portion of it, in which he says that these wars are being created by people that don't even know what they're doing. Let me show you this video. It's pretty interesting, at least a part of it.
I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." He is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
Okay, well,
he's 10 days after 9/11, I went.
He's referring, of course, to the attack in Iraq, all of the activities over there. We never really got the petroleum in Iraq. We actually neglected to improve the refineries north of Baghdad. In fact, recently ExxonMobil has pulled out of that region and upset the Iraqi government. And it's ironic that Barack Obama, who pulled out of the war because George Bush intended to pull out of the war, actually is sending supplies into Iraq now, and Prime Minister Maliki is asking for support again against the insurgent activity. So there are no resolutions to these low-intensity conflict involvements that our country's been involved in over the many years. There are no solutions. That's why the last war this country won was actually the war of World War II. This was a time when our country, again, was called to action to defend freedom around the world, and consequently, we were kind of like pushed into it by FDR, a member of the elitist community. Now, I'm going to show you something that may shock all of you, but here's a little taste of that speech that FDR had when he asked us to go to war. Let me give you the final moments of it.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Okay, now let me show you what happened 1 week before that war. This is very interesting to see this, and I'll wrap this little video up for you. 1 week before that war, this appeared in the newspaper, the Hilo Tribune Herald. This war was known about. 1 week before the Pearl Harbor strike occurred, this appeared on the papers in Japan, or excuse me, in Hawaii. Japan may strike over weekend. They knew in advance this would happen. Yet FDR did nothing to prevent the 2,000 plus men who died out there in the waters off of Honolulu the day of infamy. Now, I don't want to be a person that says that we were forced into it, but I got to tell you, he had opposition. FDR had people like Father Coughlin, who was a third-party activist at the time, supporting an anti-war movement. FDR had Father Coughlin out there with 30 million people going against the war, and he needed something dramatic to put us into a war with Japan and with Germany and Europe. So he used the Pearl Harbor event to start it, and he probably knew about Pearl Harbor a week before, just like the newspaper knew. So we're seeing a lot of manipulation going on from the elitists to start wars, and obviously that can't keep going on. Fool us once, it's your fault. Fool us twice, it's our fault. Fool us three times, it's the American people's fault. So we are not going to be fooled again. And these elitists have had their entire card game exposed. They're playing with their cards open now. The American people can see that their false flag operations don't trigger gun control. It can't get the Senate to pass a gun control initiative. The American people are smarter than this. And we're not going to sit back and watch these powerful elitists control us from their corporate headquarters overseas. We are up to the task to build this third party and to challenge these people at what they do, which is to start wars and use economic hitmen to create them. It'll come to pass that Libya was all about global elitists wanting to control the monetary system. Muammar Gaddafi was building his old gold currency, gold-backed currency. Muammar Gaddafi has signed a peace treaty with us in 2007 over weapons of mass destruction. But we essentially were forced into it by their puppet, Obama, the person who just said, oh yeah, well, we got a problem here and we're going to take care of it. You know, that's not something I would do. As your president, I will not have those people pull my strings, because we're going to be building an infrastructure so strong in America, we're going to bring our country back to the helm of world production and start leading by example, showing the world that we aren't being controlled, our strings aren't being pulled anymore, and we have the richest country in the world that can totally decimate these elitists and destroy them right now, where they sleaze in their little caverns of monetary control. They're sleaze bags. We will root them out, and we will prosecute them for wars that they have created that has led to the deaths and destruction of countless people around the world. Let's not forget that 4 million people, innocent people, died in the Vietnam War. That LBJ didn't even have a reason to do this, but he had somebody pulling his strings. The Iraq and Afghanistan wars led to 6,000 deaths, not to mention collateral damages to the innocent civilians. Up to 1 million people have died. This is not a joke, folks. This is a serious thing, and we're going to have to challenge these people where it counts, and we're going to have to build this political movement to take this on for the 2016 election. I'm David John Sponheim, and I support this message.